And if, maybe there's one that I would address, it would be with regard to how quickly these vaccines were developed. And we should remember that in 2003, we actually had our first outbreak of severe acute respiratory syndrome. This virus is severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. So that is an indication to the entire scientific community when we first heard that, this is the second time we've seen it. When did we see it before? We saw it before in 2003. We had that first outbreak. By and large, we had the global pandemic surveillance team in place. We were able to keep that outbreak off of our shores, but alarms were really going off within the scientific community for a number of reasons. One is a virus. What do viruses do? They replicate quickly, they mutate quickly. The other thing was that this was a respiratory virus. We are Homo sapiens. We live on a single planet in the galaxy, Earth. We are humans. As Earth dwellers, we are dependent on oxygen. Our entire atmosphere is made up of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. So we can't opt out of air, as opposed to other types of pandemics that might be bloodborne or foodborne or fecal-borne or body fluids. This was air. And so it was very concerning. 2012, we had another outbreak, a sister outbreak, by and large held to Saudi Arabia, the MERS outbreak. You might remember some of these terms. They might have been going through the news and they were beneath your radar, but this is the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. So now bells are really ringing. By the time we get to 2020, when we have our very first case here in the United States, we've had 17 years of dedicated scientists working on these viruses. And when I say working, I mean, all of the preclinical work was done, done. All of the bench work research was completed. The entire genomic sequence, all 30,000 base pairs, think about that, have been identified and analyzed, and the mechanism of action of this particular family of viruses of binding to what we call the angiotensin converting enzyme receptor on our cell. That's how we get infected, had already been identified. We hadn't even had the first case in the United States. We already knew all of that. Right. So this didn't come out of nowhere. And I can add a second part to that question. Maybe they have a follow-up question with regard to the reason the vaccines were developed so quickly. If that's, what you're thinking, it does seem that way. So the second part of that question to consider is that the vaccine companies, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, when you develop vaccines, you develop them in 3 phases. You have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 2 never begins until phase 1 ends. Not only does phase 1 end, all of the data comes in and you analyze all of the data, and then you make a decision on whether the data is positive enough to go to phase 2. The reason you do that is it costs almost $1 billion to bring a drug or vaccine to the market. So each phase, you're investing hundreds of millions of dollars. So the companies want to make certain that the data looks good before they invest in going to the next phase. Right. So this takes a long time. So what happened? We had unlimited resources. And when I say resources, I mean money. Government gave them money. So now you have de-risked the process for the companies. They can make these vaccines and combine and stack all of these phases together and essentially look at all the data at the end. Because if the data is negative and the vaccines are not going to work, it's not their $1 billion that they just lost. So if you have unlimited resources, you de-risk the process, and the entire process is escalated. In addition to that, we could do what? You can hire more scientists, hire more experts, open more study sites, close other projects, prioritize this. When you have unlimited resources, you can really accelerate the timeline, especially if those unlimited resources are not yours. It's always easy to risk someone else's money. There is no loss in it. So the only thing they would lose, there's only an upside to getting the vaccine out quickly. They have nothing to lose.